Willow Ashford, the secretary of my mate Alpha Garrett Blackwood, files our marking ceremony application as a mate bond dissolution for the 37th time. I finally can't hold back anymore and storm into Garrett's office, my voice trembling. Is this what you call a top graduate from the elite Werewolves Academy? She couldn't even figure out a simple marking ceremony application. This is the 37th time. If you really don't have time to manage your employees, I can help you fire her. Garrett looks up from his documents, glances at the application records on my phone screen and sighs. I told you before, you can't have someone of Willow's caliber doing menial tasks for you. If you have time to come here and lose your temper at me, you might as well go handle it yourself. But he doesn't know that I just discovered I'm with Pup. The doctor warned me to protect the pup and avoid crowds, and the werewolf affairs department is always packed and suffocating. I look at his cold profile, and something deep inside me finally shatters. In that moment, I decide to end it all. But on the day I leave the pack with our pup, leaving him behind, he goes crazy searching for me everywhere. I staggered out of Garrett Blackwood's office, feeling my stomach churning. Bile was rising in my throat, but I couldn't bring myself to vomit. 37 times. This was already the 37th time Willow Ashford had filed my and Garrett's marking ceremony application, as a mate bond dissolution instead. I still clearly remember the expression she made the first time she made the mistake. When I brought that incorrect document to Garrett, Willow's eyes were red-rimmed as she apologized to him. I'm sorry, Alpha, it's all my fault for being so stupid. I got too nervous when I saw the word mates, and I was so focused on not making a mistake that I ended up checking the wrong option. Raven, please don't be angry with Alpha Garrett because of me. Garrett's slightly furrowed brow smoothed out the instant he saw Willow's tears, and he even comforted her gently. It's fine, all new employees make mistakes. Then he turned to me, pulling my hand into his warm embrace, speaking in a tone that was intimate yet brooked no argument. All right, Raven, don't be upset. You're the future Luna, and you need to be more forgiving. Willow is just a newcomer, so we should be more understanding, I watched him lecture me on how to be a good Luna, and something twisted in my chest. However, I still nodded, telling myself that it was only the first time after all. Maybe I really was overthinking it. But from then on, making mistakes became routine. Willow's apologies became more and more practiced. Her excuses ranged from my hand slipped to the system glitched, and she looked so pitiful each time she apologized. Garrett's defense of her became automatic. My concerns were dismissed as overreacting and merely picking on the newcomer. A full 37 times was enough to extinguish any hope. Upon returning to the penthouse we shared, I collapsed onto the couch, drained of strength. The little life in my womb seemed to sense my emotions and moved gently, as if silently comforting me. I placed my hand on my still flat belly. This was all the strength and courage I had to leave. Garrett didn't come home until late at night. He carried a scent that didn't belong to me, a sickeningly sweet smell. That was Willow's scent. That cloying sweetness invaded my nostrils, instantly stealing all the air from my lungs. He didn't seem to notice my reaction and walked straight to the bar to pour a glass of water, then placed that glass in front of me. Are you still angry about what happened today? He asked. I didn't speak and just looked at him quietly. Under my gaze, he shifted uncomfortably and said what he thought was considerate. I already talked to Willow about it. Tomorrow she'll resubmit the application. She just graduated from school after all, and lacks practical experience. She also hasn't dealt with much paperwork. You should be more understanding. He paused, pulled an exquisite wooden box from his jacket, and placed it in front of me. Stop being upset. Look what I brought you. This is dewgrass that I specially found at the black market. They say it has miraculous effects on strengthening werewolves' constitution. It's extremely rare. He opened the box, and an overwhelmingly putrid sweet fragrance hit me, instantly making my stomach churn even worse. I dug my nails into my palms to keep myself from dry heaving again. 3 days ago, the doctor had warned me that during early pregnancy, I couldn't be exposed to this type of potent herb. It could cause irreversible harm to the pup. Garrett didn't know I was with Pup. Or rather, He simply hadn't cared about why I'd been having no appetite and looking so listless lately. As I looked into his expectant eyes, seemingly waiting for my gratitude, I suddenly felt incredibly tired. There was no point in fighting or crying anymore. I reached out and took the wooden box, my voice so calm it surprised even me. "Garrett, thank you." He blinked, surprised by my composure, then smiled with satisfaction. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Get some rest early, don't overthink things." He thought he had easily soothed my emotions. He thought I would endure it all without complaint because I loved him, just like countless times before. I softly hummed in agreement, watching him walk into his study. The study door closed gently, and that relieved, satisfied smile on his face pierced straight through my heart. But strangely, after that sharp pain, I didn't cry. Instead, there was an unprecedented, hollow calm. I took the box of dewgrass he treasured so much and walked into the bathroom. I lifted the toilet seat and, without a moment's hesitation, dumped all the herbs into it and pressed the flush button. The swirling water carried everything away, including the last of my love for him. Early the next morning, before I was fully awake, I felt a kiss on my forehead. Garrett was already dressed and ready to leave. He leaned over me, his voice soft with what he thought was tenderness. "I'm heading to the pack headquarters first. Things have been busy lately, and I've been neglecting you. Once I'm done with this, I'll spend proper time with you." I didn't move. I didn't even open my eyes. I no longer had the energy to play along. He probably thought I was still asleep. He kissed my cheek once more before turning to leave. I quietly listened to his footsteps fade away until I heard the front door close, then slowly opened my eyes. His so-called tenderness and all those shallow, empty promises felt like a cruel joke now. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. On the other end, my father's voice came through, filled with surprise. "Raven? What made you think to call all of a sudden?" Father's voice was still steady, just as I remembered it. But this long-missed steadiness, tinged with concern, broke down all my defenses. Years of hurt, the queasiness in my stomach, and uncertainty about what lay ahead all crashed over me at once, making it hard to speak. After a long moment, I found my voice again. "Father, I want to come home." There was silence on the other end. Then his worry intensified. "What did Garrett do to you? Did he hurt you?" "No," I said softly, leaning against the headboard. "I'm just tired and want to come back to clear my head." Didn't press further. His answer was firm, warm, and reliable. "Then come home. I'll send someone to pick you up. No matter what, this will always be your home." After hanging up, I tossed my phone aside. My parents were the current Alpha and Luna of the most powerful pack in the North. I was born there, destined from birth to be a leader. But I fled from that place, and from that fate that suffocated me. I ditched my guards and, for the first time, rebelliously concealed my identity. That was why when I met Garrett at a young adults gathering in neutral territory, he thought I was just a helpless orphan. I gave up everything, my family and my future, for this freedom to love. I followed him here. But now, I could see everything clearly. Lost in thought, I picked up my phone again and opened the pack's internal network. The pinned post was a status update Willow had posted half an hour ago. In the photos, she wore tight training gear and posed with a shirtless Garrett in a series of shots. He was guiding her fighting stance hand by hand with their bodies pressed close together, their interactions intimate. The caption read, "Just convinced the Alpha to train with me." He was a little annoyed at first, but I told him that if he could beat me in training, I'd treat him to dinner. I didn't expect his competitive streak to be so strong. He ended up agreeing to my request anyway. After seeing that photo, my stomach churned instantly, and I couldn't help but dry heave again. This was his so-called busy affairs? It's nothing more than having fun with his secretary at the training grounds. Thankfully, thanks to Willow, the marking ceremony application that had been submitted 37 times had never once succeeded. I gathered my few packed belongings and headed to the Council of Elders at the pack headquarters to submit my application to leave the pack. The head elder, Roger Morgan, took my application and glanced at it once before looking up sharply, his eyes full of shock and confusion. "Raven, what do you mean by this? You're the Alpha's chosen mate, our entire pack's future Luna. Another elder also hurried to his feet, his tone earnest. Yes, Raven, you've given so much to this pack. We already consider you family. If there's trouble, if the Alpha has wronged you, tell us. We can make it right. Before I could answer, the door opened. Garrett strode in, carrying a file folder. I glanced over, and saw a telltale red lipstick mark on his collar. He used to hate it when I left any marks on him, saying that he needed to maintain his dignity at all times as an Alpha. Even in our most intimate moments, I was forced to stay silent, hiding my passion behind clenched teeth and clutched sheets. But now I understood. It wasn't that he didn't want marks left on him, he just didn't want them to be left by me. As soon as he entered, Elder Roger sighed and spoke. Garrett, perfect timing. Talk some sense into Raven. She wants to leave the pack. Did you two have a fight? This has nothing to do with him. You want to leave the pack? Two voices intertwined. He sounded incredulous, and I remained firm. Garrett's gaze locked onto me, his brow furrowed. I knew it. You're still upset about the wrong application yesterday, aren't you? The elders shook their heads when they heard him, and left on their own to give us space. The door clicked shut. He approached, his voice gentle, filled with exasperation as he said, I already told you Willow didn't do it on purpose. Why are you being so petty? I tried to stay calm and looked up at him with a smile. I'm not angry. I want to leave the pack because I'm tired and need to get away for a while. He grabbed my hand. If you want to get away, why not just take a vacation? You just scolded Willow and now suddenly want to leave. What will people think of her? They'll assume she angered you. How is a newcomer supposed to establish herself in the pack after that? A vacation? Thanks to Willow's 37 mistakes, every time I tried to relax on a holiday, I'd receive a text message about our mate bond dissolution on my phone. How could I possibly relax on vacation? And now, Garrett was only worried that my justified departure would affect Willow's reputation. My heart felt desolate, and my gaze fell on that lipstick mark again. This time he noticed. He quickly raised his hand to cover his collar. This got on me during training with Willow this morning. Don't read too much into it. I was somewhat surprised that he would actually explain it to me, but the excuse was too clumsy to fool someone who was already disappointed in him. I nodded without saying anything. Garrett relaxed, thinking I had calmed down, and pulled me into his arms. That's more like it, my dear future Luna. You need to be more generous. Stop threatening to leave. Tonight I'll take you to Moonlight Cliff Restaurant for dinner, okay? Consider it compensation. Before I could answer, the door burst open with a bang. Alpha. Willow didn't announce herself and pushed straight in. Upon seeing Garrett's arm around me, the smile on her face froze. I felt his arm around me instinctively loosen. What is it? Garrett asked with a frown. Willow put on that innocent smile again. Sorry for interrupting you and Raven, but I had no choice. I don't quite understand this alliance contract and needed to ask you about it. Garrett's arm around me immediately dropped. He walked over to her side, took the document from her hands, and leaned down, his tone patient and instructive. Willow glanced up at me, standing to the side, and her eyes held a challenging glint. Alpha, this alliance contract is critically important. It's probably not convenient to discuss it here. I think we should go back to your office instead. Garrett immediately nodded. Only when they reached the door did he finally remember me. I'm going to discuss this document with Willow. You get some rest and go home to wait for me. After saying that, he didn't spare me another glance and walked out shoulder to shoulder with Willow. In the second before the door gently closed, I saw Willow turn back and flash me a triumphant smile. Only the sound of my breathing remained in the empty room. The morning sickness from pregnancy made me dry heave uncontrollably again. I straightened up wearily, and in the next second, something loosened around my neck. The wolf fang pendant Garrett had given me fell to the ground and cracked in half. I could still recall how he looked the day he gave it to me, and how his eyes had shone with passion. A wolf only gives its fang to its one true mate. This is my fang. Wear it, Raven, and I will protect you. Forever. Forever, huh? I crouched down and gathered the wolf fang fragments in my palm. The jagged pieces bit into my skin, but I barely felt it. Then, I threw all the pieces into the trash can in the corner of the room. Garrett, I no longer wanted your protection. I walked out of the meeting room and found the elders waiting at the end of the hallway. Elder Roger saw me come out alone and glanced toward Garrett's office. The last glimmer of hope in his eyes died. Raven, have you really decided? I nodded firmly and handed him the document again. I won't change my mind. Please approve it, Elder Roger. Elder Roger looked at my resolute expression and fell silent for a long time before finally accepting the application and stamping it. So be it. Since we can't make you stay, we won't force you. May the moon goddess always watch over you. After receiving the officially stamped document to leave the pack, I returned to my office to gather my last few belongings. Lynn Valdez, one of the few friends who knew my past, stood there with red-rimmed eyes. Raven, are you really leaving? Now I'll have to watch that Willow prancing around in front of me every day. I followed her gaze, where I saw the Alpha's office door was half open. Garrett stood beside Willow, explaining a document to her with patience I'd never seen him show before. She looked confused and helpless, her lower lip jutting out as her eyelashes fluttered. Seeing her hesitation, Garrett suddenly pulled out a form and handed it to her. As long as you take on this project, the pack's resources are at your disposal. Don't worry about messing up. Willow froze, surprise flashing in her eyes as her cheeks turned pink. Really? You mean you're giving me authority over the pack's resources? But isn't that supposed to be the Luna's, right? Won't Raven be upset? Garrett chuckled casually. Why would I lie? And her, upset about this? Raven isn't Luna yet. Even if she were, my word comes first. No one gets to interfere. Willow immediately brightened, beaming as she accepted the form. The next second, she turned and spotted me through the door crack and stood up in a panic. Raven, Alpha Garrett and I aren't doing anything. He only gave me this to help me complete my work. At her words, everyone around us looked back and forth between me and her, their eyes filled with sympathy. 5 years. For 5 years, I'd held the title of future Luna, but Garrett had never given me any real Luna authority. And now, he casually handed her something I'd never been allowed to have. Even Lynn was indignant on my behalf. Is he insane? How could he? I shook my head to stop her. My voice was calm, too calm. Congratulations, Willow. With that kind of authority, your work will be much easier. Seeing that I wasn't angry, Willow seemed unsatisfied and continued. Raven, this really is just for work. Please don't be mad at me, okay? I found it absurd. There was no point in getting angry. If I returned to my parents, the entire North would be under my command. Why would I covet the resource authority of this small pack? But Garrett heard Willow's words and turned to me, his tone carrying that infuriating patience, like he was humoring me. All right, Raven, as the future Luna, you need to be more generous. Don't let the pack members think you can't tolerate newcomers. I slowly exhaled, my expression still unreadable. I'm not angry. You don't need to keep guessing what I'm thinking. Garrett seemed relieved, though his brow still showed a hint of disapproval. Good that you understand. Go home and rest. I'll be back later. Then, right in front of me, he closed the door and continued his discussion with Willow. Lynn couldn't help but ask, "You're just letting them get away with this?" I organized my files while shaking my head. As far as I'm concerned, my relationship with Garrett is over. I don't care anymore. Now having the pup was enough for me. Near evening, Garrett finally emerged from his office. He looked surprised to see I was still there. Didn't I tell you to go home and rest? Why are you still here? Well, it works out. There's a celebration banquet tonight for the pack's increased trade revenue, so come with me. Then his eyes suddenly caught sight of my bare neck. He froze, asking with some panic, "Where's the wolf fang pendant I gave you?" "It's too precious. I was worried about damaging it, so I put it away at home for safekeeping," I replied. He visibly relaxed and smiled as he pulled me up. "You used to wear it every day before. Why did you suddenly decide to put it away?" I didn't answer, just obediently let him pull me to my feet. I couldn't refuse to attend the banquet here. Father's plane would arrive tonight, and any unusual behavior might make Garrett suspicious. I couldn't take that risk. Fine. I would consider this a final farewell party for our 5-year relationship. I saw Willow hurry over to stand beside us. Alpha, I'm ready, she chirped. Just like that, his attention shifted away from me. He didn't even look at me and began explaining. Willow worked hard on the alliance contract too. I'm letting her attend as the pack's reward for outstanding members. You don't mind, right? After all, you're the future Luna. You need to be generous. Generous. Right. She might as well have my mate. Was that generous enough? I watched Willow walk straight to the main entrance of the banquet hall, accepting the fawning reception from the attendants. In my 5 years here, I had never received such grand treatment. Garrett said I had to wait until I truly completed the ceremony before I could stand before everyone. And now this honor fell to someone else first. The banquet hall was brilliantly lit, with all the elders gathered together. Somehow, Garrett was walking with Willow again. They entered the banquet hall side by side, with everyone's eyes following them as applause thundered. When it came time for the award ceremony, the beta stood up to toast, loudly praising Willow's contributions to the pack. Garrett even personally handed her the ceremonial crystal goblet that symbolized honor and solemnly said, "Tonight's achievements belong to you, Willow." Everyone's eyes were burning with envy and admiration. I stood to the side, gripping my wine glass tightly, ignored by all. For years, I'd been the one maintaining this pack, handling orders even while with Pup. Now I was nothing but a shadow. When Willow turned around, surrounded by admirers and beaming with pride, she shot me a look of pure triumph. I set down my wine glass and looked at the table full of rich dishes, having lost all appetite. Garrett noticed I wasn't eating and finally sat beside me, asking carefully, "What's wrong? Are you upset?" I shook my head with an indifferent smile. "No, not at all. I'm just not used to all the noise." After the banquet ended, Willow seemed to have had too much to drink. She swayed unsteadily and mumbled about feeling sick. Garrett immediately reached out to support her, frowning as he turned to ask my opinion. "Raven, she lives far away alone. I don't feel comfortable letting her go back by herself. Should I take her home first?" I looked at his worried, cautious expression and found it almost amusing. Still, I said nothing and just nodded lightly. He smiled with relief, then personally helped Willow leave under everyone's gaze. Meanwhile, I calmly walked in the opposite direction. I left behind all that applause, cheering, and brilliant lights that had nothing to do with me. Father's private jet had been waiting outside the pack territory for some time. On my phone, Garrett was still messaging me, planning the 38th marking ceremony application. Perhaps feeling somewhat guilty, he volunteered to take full responsibility this time. "Don't worry, this time we'll definitely succeed. I absolutely won't make any mistakes." I replied expressionlessly, "Sure." I knew it was impossible for there to be no mistakes. I understood Willow better than he did. Sure enough, as I boarded the plane, he sent another message. Willow drank too much and went crazy with alcohol. She used my phone to change the ceremony application we submitted. "Don't be upset. I'll go to the werewolf affairs department myself tomorrow and make sure it gets handled properly." I let out a bitter laugh. Of course he would. With steady hands, I sent him my final message. "It's fine, I don't mind. I've already packed my bags and left the pack. Garrett, we'll never see each other again." After sending it, I blocked him. Meanwhile, Garrett froze completely after reading my message. Willow had already sobered up. After opening her front door, she didn't immediately go inside or turn on the lights. Using the dim light from outside, she reached out to hook her arm around Garrett's neck, her eyes hazy. "Alpha," Garrett unceremoniously shook off her hand. "Don't bother me." The icy words instantly left Willow standing there in shock. Garrett's phone kept repeating the same message. "Sorry, the number you've dialed is currently unavailable." He'd lost count of how many times he'd tried calling after seeing my message, but all he got was the cold automated response. "Impossible. Raven must be speaking out of anger." Garrett frowned as he kept repeating the action. In his mind, I was just a helpless orphan. Where could I possibly go? Still, the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Right. Home. I need to go home right now. She must be waiting for me there like she always does, he muttered. With that thought, he immediately turned and left, ignoring Willow's calls behind him. He drove through the night streets at breakneck speed back to our shared penthouse. The moment he opened the door, he saw only pitch darkness. He couldn't catch even a trace of my scent. I'd always been afraid of the dark. Whether he was home or not, I would always leave a dim lamp on, filling the entire space with that reassuring warm glow. Garrett grew more panicked and cautiously called out to the living room, "Raven?" There was no response. He immediately turned on the lights, but what greeted him was an empty house. Everything that belonged to me, my scent and any trace that I had ever existed there, had vanished completely. Fear crept into Garrett's heart as he carefully walked into the bedroom. The bedroom was clean and tidy. On the nightstand, our only photo together now showed just his half. As he looked at the background of the photo, he suddenly remembered it was taken when we first got together. Back then, he had promised to treat me well for life, to make me the happiest Luna in the world. But ever since Willow arrived as his secretary, he seemed to have gotten busier, and he gradually pushed me to the background. Garrett knew he was in the wrong, but then he thought about it again. He had always compensated me each time. Like tonight, he had even brought me to the celebration banquet. As he thought about it, he froze. He had barely spoken to me during the entire banquet. Even during the award ceremony, he had forgotten that I deserved recognition too. I always contributed quietly when no one was looking, so when had he started taking my sacrifices for granted? The more he thought about it, the more panicked he became. He immediately searched through every cabinet, desperate to find any trace that I had ever existed there. Just as he despairingly pulled open the bottom drawer of the nightstand, his fingertips touched a thin piece of paper crushed in the corner. Like grasping at straws, he tremblingly pulled it out. It was a folded pregnancy test report. My name was written clearly on it, dated just a week ago. In the results section, the words hit him like a punch to the gut. Pregnancy positive. Below that, the doctor's notes were clear. Early pregnancy is extremely unstable. Requires rest. Avoid crowds. Must not be exposed to dewgrass or other potent herbs. Dewgrass. Garrett's hand trembled, and the thin paper fluttered to the floor. He staggered back a step, hitting the wall, his mind reeling. Pregnant I was with pup. How had he not noticed? He thought of my increasingly pale complexion lately, and the exhaustion that never left my face. He remembered how I had barely touched dinner several times, only saying I had no appetite. He even remembered that day in the office when I suddenly turned and dry heaved. He had thought I was deliberately expressing dissatisfaction with Willow. And last night at the restaurant, that plate of roast meat he had carefully cut for Mayhay, even recalled the strangely calm look in my eyes when I accepted that box of deadly dewgrass he had personally handed me. He had actually been pleased by what he thought was my understanding. He had never paid attention at all. Thinking back, he hadn't always been like this. There was a time when even if I frowned unintentionally, his heart would tighten with concern. When had it started? Since Willow's arrival, had he truly not noticed my changes, or had he simply stopped wanting to care? He thought about those 37 botched marking ceremony applications, and his repeated tolerance of Willow. When had the look in my eyes toward him grown increasingly disappointed? It turned out that he himself, together with Willow, had pushed me and our pup toward the abyss. A wave of regret and panic unlike anything he'd ever experienced threatened to overwhelm him. He rushed out of the penthouse like a madman and raced back to the pack headquarters. Elder Roger was preparing to go home and rest when a frantic Garrett intercepted him at the council chamber door, breathlessly asking, "Did Raven really submit an application to leave the pack? Did you approve it?" Elder Roger took in Garrett's distraught appearance with a gaze full of disappointment. "You didn't know? She was very determined about it yesterday. Said it had nothing to do with you. That it was her own decision. I thought you knew about it afterward." At these words, Garrett froze on the spot. His mind flashed to yesterday's image of me trying to speak, but stopping myself. But every time, he had been interrupted by Willow and then distracted by her various issues. The entire day he hadn't given me a single chance to speak with him alone properly. He gripped Elder Roger's shoulders tightly, asking with his last glimmer of hope, Do you know where she went? Elder Roger sighed and patted his hand consolingly. She's no longer a member of our pack. We have no right to inquire about her whereabouts. You're her mate. If you don't know, how would we? Garrett lost his last lead to finding me and sat numbly in the cold office for a long time. During this time of sitting in a daze, he thought of many memories with me. 5 years ago, we first met at a gathering in neutral territory. Back then, I had been proud and strong. He felt we were kindred spirits, both self-made and not relying on any background or connections. He was deeply attracted to me because of this, and I ultimately chose to follow him to a southern pack that was still unknown at the time. Everything changed when Willow arrived as his secretary. Lynn had once been indignant on my behalf, saying Willow was scheming. He hadn't believed it then. Garrett grew tired of sitting and slowly stood up. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimmer of light from the trash can in the corner. He instinctively walked closer, and saw the shattered wolf fang pendant. Only then did he realize that my pendant had broken here yesterday, right after he abandoned me and left with Willow without looking back. Garrett carefully picked up every fragment from inside the trash can, his eyes instantly welling up with tears. At some point, Lynn had been leaning against the doorway watching him, and she sighed. Alpha, regretting it now won't do any good. Raven already left. Garrett sniffled and mumbled to himself. It doesn't matter. Once I repair this pendant and find her, she'll definitely forgive me. Besides, she said she came from a small pack that was destroyed long ago, that she had no one to rely on. She has nowhere else to go. She'll definitely come back. Lynn flatly revealed the truth. Stop looking for her. She was never some orphan from a small pack. Garrett froze in place and slowly turned to look at her. You're lying. She told me that herself. That's because she was afraid of hurting your pathetic ego and kept it from you. She's the Alpha's daughter from the most powerful pack in the north. Garrett's face went pale instantly. His mind suddenly flashed with many images of seeing me for the first time. That inherent nobility and composure I carried. That casual indifference toward any expensive treasure. Back then, he had even secretly laughed at my lack of appreciation, thinking it was just affected sophistication from someone trying to seem worldly. Now that he thought about it, how could someone like that possibly have come from a declining small pack like he had? Lynn didn't bother saying more to him, and turned to leave. However, Garrett didn't want to give up this only lead, and turned to chase after her. Lynn, tell me, which pack is it? Where in the north? I know you two are close. You must know. As Alpha, I order you to tell me. Garrett grabbed Lynn's arm with trembling hands. Lynn calmly shook off his hand and shook her head helplessly. Alpha, I hate to say this to you, but Raven finally managed to get away from you. Do you think I'd tell you? You're my Alpha, and I should obey you. But this time I'm on Raven's side. Punish me if you want. Garrett had no rebuttal and released Lynn's arm. She merely sighed and walked away. Garrett stood there with a blank gaze, muttering under his breath, I'll find her. I'll definitely find her and our pup. Meanwhile, when my private jet landed in the Northern Territory, it was already deep into the night. My parents, who had long been accustomed to early bedtimes, still stood on the tarmac. They were looking around anxiously in the cold wind as they waited for me to come home. When I saw them, I couldn't hold back anymore. I quickened my pace and stopped in front of them, my voice choked with emotion. Father, Mother, Father gently stroked my head, his voice full of heartache. It's so good to see you, my pup. It's good that you're home. Everything in the house was exactly as I had left it 5 years ago. Under the careful care of my parents and the pack's physicians, I rested for several days, and the early pregnancy symptoms finally subsided. After that, I volunteered to join the pack's administrative center. My parents didn't announce my identity, and I worked as an ordinary pack member, starting from the most basic tasks. Although it was hard work, I felt much more relaxed and happy, because from today forward, I was no longer living for Garrett. I was living for myself and for the pup in my womb. What he could accomplish in the South, I could do just as well in my own home. 2 months later, due to my outstanding performance, I was promoted to deputy director of the administrative center. When my parents learned the news, they immediately ordered the kitchen to prepare a large feast to celebrate. I knew my daughter was the most capable. Mother smiled as she served me food. Just as the staff brought the next dish to the table, we heard the guards announcing someone's arrival outside. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was one of the pack elders coming to congratulate me. I went straight to the door, only to see Garrett, whom I hadn't seen in 2 months. Raven, he looked much thinner. His hair was disheveled, and stubble covered his chin. His unkempt appearance was a far cry from the confident alpha he once was, and his voice was terribly hoarse. When Mother saw I hadn't responded for a long time, she walked over and asked, "Who is it, sweetheart?" Knowing how much my parents despised Garrett, I quickly pushed him outside in panic and called back, "An old friend, Mother. I'm going out for a bit." I pulled Garrett quickly into the yard. Once I was sure my parents wouldn't follow, I pushed him aside. "How did you know I was here?" I questioned. Garrett seemed nervous and uneasy, speaking carefully. "Don't be angry. Lynn wouldn't tell me, so I investigated myself. I used every connection I had and searched for 2 whole months before I could confirm your pack's general territory. Yesterday at the border market, I saw your pack's emblem and followed the trail here. Even at your front door, I hesitated for a long time before daring to have someone announce me." He carefully pulled out a wooden box from his jacket. "This is the wolf fang pendant you broke." I glued it back together. When I saw the pendant that had accompanied me for years reappear before me, I was somewhat stunned. I could clearly see an ugly adhesive crack running through the middle of the wolf fang. I didn't take it. "There's no need. This is your fang. You should give it to Willow instead." But considering all the precious gifts you've given her, not to mention the Luna's authority over pack resources, she probably wouldn't want something this simple anyway. Garrett's eyes reddened, and he stepped forward, trying to grab my hand. "I messed up, Raven. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how badly I'd screwed things up until after you left. For our pup's sake, please give me another chance to make things right." "No." I stepped back out of his reach and said coolly, "Garrett, I've already escaped that nightmare. I will never jump back in for anyone's sake, not with my pup." Garrett didn't say a word. He just stubbornly pressed the wooden box into my hands. "Then keep it. This used to be your most treasured possession. I don't mean anything by it. I just want you to be happy." I looked at the wooden box forced into my hands, but I didn't open it. I just lightly traced the cold patterns on the lid. After a long moment, I spoke softly, my voice betraying no emotion. "Garrett, something that's been broken once will always have cracks, even after it's been fixed. Just like us. We can't go back to the way things were." With that, I gently placed the wooden box on a stone bench between us and didn't look at it again. Garrett's mouth opened slightly, but he couldn't find the words to say for a long time. "I used to treasure it because I loved you, so I treasured everything about you. But now," I paused and looked at him calmly. "That love is gone. Without love to sustain it, this means nothing to me anymore." As I spoke and watched as this man's eyes turned red, I suddenly felt my own eyes sting a little. Honestly, this was the first time I'd ever seen him cry, but in the past, I had cried for him so many times. When he fought rival packs for territory, and he ended up severely injured by a rival alpha. When we worked hard enough to buy our penthouse, and that marking ceremony that could never take place each time, I had cried until I was inconsolable. Garrett had gone from being helplessly heartbroken, at first, to completely indifferent later. Now he was the one crying, but only because he'd lost his perfect Luna, the one who obeyed him completely, enhanced his image and managed everything for him. I paid him no more attention, and turned back to the house to continue dinner with my parents. I had schooled my expression to be normal, so they had no idea Garrett had been there. Mother kept serving me food, while Father picked out all the bones from what he considered the most nutritious meat, and pushed it toward me. This kind of ordinary care, which seemed so natural to them, had gradually become something I couldn't get from Garrett, no matter how much I wanted it. Fortunately, I was still young, and my pup could still grow up in an environment full of love. The next day, when I went to the pack's administrative center, a pack member called me over with a mysterious expression. "Raven, do you have an alpha pursuing you?" Natasha Starlin asked. I was somewhat confused by this question. Natasha held out a bouquet of rare moonlight flowers with a bundle of magically warmed herbs beside it. Early this morning, an alpha from another pack was waiting outside. He said to give these to you, and that this calming herb is good for an expecting she-wolf. As for the flowers, he said he hopes seeing them might brighten your day. I didn't take the bouquet, and just glanced at the card. Raven, I'll send these every day. I hope you're happy every day. It was Garrett, of course. As I looked at the flowers and herbs, I felt utterly exhausted and said to Natasha, please help me dispose of these. She looked troubled, but that alpha said, I calmly interrupted her. From now on, handle anything he sends the same way. I won't accept it, and I don't want to see it. Natasha immediately gathered up the items. Okay, of course. Garrett acted as if he didn't know his gifts were being thrown away. He continued sending things to our pack headquarters every day, rain or shine. Gradually, the entire pack knew that a Southern Pack's alpha was frantically pursuing me. On a day when I couldn't stand it anymore, I got up extra early. After seeing Garrett quietly leave flowers and herbs at the pack headquarters entrance again, I walked out and blocked his path before he could turn around. Without looking at him, I picked up the items from the ground and held them out to him. Garrett, please take your things back, I said calmly. What's the point of this? What you call devotion is just a burden to me, and it's disrupting my peaceful life now. Please stop this pointless behavior. Garrett reluctantly took back the flowers and herbs, then looked at my belly with a glimmer of hope. I just want you and the pup to be well. I shook my head wearily. Do you think showing up here helps? No, Garrett. Every time you appear, you remind me of past pain. That only makes me and the pup more unsettled. If you really care about us, please stay away from us. Garrett hung his head and didn't say another word. I thought my last rejection would make Garrett leave for good. But a few days later, the receptionist approached me looking troubled. She informed me there was an urgent problem with a trade contract between us and a neighboring pack. They were accusing us of breach of contract, and needed me to go to the meadow at the pack border immediately for negotiations. When I arrived at the designated location, I was stunned. I sighed internally at the sight of Garrett. He had recreated our first meeting in neutral territory. He wore a sharp outfit and clutched the repaired wolf fang pendant, his gaze pleading. Raven, can you please give me one more chance? I looked at him, feeling nothing. I know I messed up, he said, his eyes reddening and voice trembling. I got addicted to the feeling of Willow constantly needing me and looking up to me. That kind of validation was so easy to get, and I let it blind me, which made me ignore you and hurt you over and over. Only after losing you did I realize how badly I screwed things up. The person I love has always been you, not her. Can you please come back? I can give up my pack and my alpha status. I don't need anything, just please forgive me. You and the pup. In terms of chances, I had already given him 37. Trust was like that cracked wolf fang. Even when repaired, the fracture would always remain. Most importantly, I no longer needed protection that could turn sour at any moment. Garrett Blackwood, you didn't mess up, I said calmly, instinctively placing my hand over my now rounded belly. You just stopped loving me, and I simply need a stable environment for my pup to grow up safely. You can't provide that, so this is how it ends. I didn't say another word and turned to leave. He didn't chase after me, as if all his strength had been completely drained the moment I turned away. It had been 2 years since then. My daughter, Belle Gardner, was almost a year and a half old. She had perfectly inherited my family's bloodline, and was a healthy, strong little werewolf. I had also worked my way up to becoming the head director of the pack's administrative center through my own abilities, truly living a life of value for myself and my family. One day, I was taking Belle out to enjoy the sunshine on the grass when Lynn suddenly came from the south to visit me. Did you hear that Garrett and Willow both crashed and burned? It turned out that in the year after I left, Garrett became disheartened and neglected managing his pack, causing it to decline rapidly. After seeing that he had lost his usefulness, Willow absconded with the pack's remaining resources, and defected to a rival alpha. But that rival alpha was suspicious by nature and didn't trust her, eventually driving her out. Under this double blow, Garrett broke down completely. In a conflict with the rival pack, He recklessly attacked their boarders and had his wolf severely damaged by their alpha, leaving him unable to shift ever again. His pack was absorbed by other packs, and he himself disappeared into the southern forests, with no one knowing his whereabouts. As I listened to Lynn's account, I felt remarkably indifferent to their fates. I looked down at my daughter in my arms, who was giving me a beaming smile, and leaned down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Those old wounds had healed completely. Now Belle and I had something beautiful,